Well, I don't think there's any doubt that this plan is positive for the global listed infrastructure asset class. The main area of interest and key drivers is going to be in the US utility sector, electric utilities in particular, and that accounts for around a third of the asset class. So what we're going to see is, the 10-year extension of renewable energy credits is going to accelerate the decarbonisation of the electricity sector and provide lots of growth opportunities, new investment opportunities in wind, solar and batteries. Secondly, the $174 billion earmarked for electric vehicle investments. I mean, we're going to participate, electric utilities are going to participate in two main ways. Firstly, they're going to be capital expenditure opportunities to roll out charging stations, to get rid of range anxiety. Our utilities are going to be involved in that. Secondly, longer term, you're going to see increase in electricity demand. Sometime in the late 2020s, early 2030s, you're going to see electricity usage actually increase from the transition that's occurring from oil to electricity driven by EVs. Go out to the 2040s and you're going to see a 20% increase in electricity demand from electric vehicles. So, significant in the short and the long term. Thirdly, $100 billion in electricity transmission from tax credits. Again, wind and solar is where it's produced is in the mid-continent and the southeast of the US, southwest of the US. It needs to get to where the population centres are on the coast, so we need more transmission to enable this transition. Now that said, economics hadn't been the key impediment. It's really been siting, permitting and regulatory environment. But again, the Biden administration is improving those things as well. Also, $111 billion for water utilities and water infrastructure. Now, we think a lot of that will go to the public sector. Think Flint, Michigan, think Jackson, Mississippi. But we think the public utilities that we invest in will benefit from some of that money, and certainly tighter health standards will benefit. And water utilities are around 2% of our asset class. Yeah, you're right, Peter. Capital expenditure is good for utilities. So we invest in wind farms, solar farms, transmission lines. We're then allowed to earn a fair return on that investment, which is usually 8 to 10% return on equity, which in the context of interest rates around the world, we think is an attractive risk-adjusted return. So with the extra investment from the energy transition, we think there's a 2% uplift in the potential earnings growth from utilities. From sort of, historically we're thinking 3 to 5%. We now think sort of 5 to 7% is where these utilities can grow their earnings for the next decade. Not the next 3 years or 3 quarters, the next decade. This is, a generational change in the transmission, in the distribution and generation of electricity in the United States. And that said, we've over the last 12 months, we've seen many large utilities actually increase their earnings expectations over this long period. So they've done their own trends, they've done their own work out into the 2025, 2030 range on the transformation that's happening in their businesses, and they've increased their earnings expectations. And we're talking large mega cap companies. Yeah, that's fair. I mean, we do have a preference, as we sit today, for US utilities compared to the Europeans. There's a few reasons. First of all, the investment opportunities are larger in the US. The US grid is not as strong as it should be. It needs to be better. The energy transition, the US is behind Europe. I mean, last year, around slightly under 40% of electricity generated in Europe was from renewable energy. In the US, that number was just over 20%. So the US has a lot of catching up to do, a lot of investment. It means more growth for the US utilities relative to Europe. Secondly, I think the allowed returns in the US are more attractive than Europe. The regulatory constructs are more favourable, the industry structures are more positive, and we think that's good for shareholders. Thirdly, I think the political, legal and the regulatory risks are higher in Europe. You have government shareholdings in European utilities, which brings government appointees to the boards and sometimes even government appointees to management. You have a society where politicians are happier to interfere in the marketplace in Europe, which evolves into the electricity sector as well. And then lastly, as you know, our process is a mix of value and quality. And while on the value side, I wouldn't disagree that European utilities are traded at a bigger discount to intrinsic value. On the quality side, we see many more favourable characteristics for the US utilities relative to Europe.
投资一定有风险，基金投资有赚有赔，申购前应详阅公开说明书与投资人须知。